Hey everybody, it's Bust with Battles with Bust number 532, and today we're doing battle with LeBlanc Darius Gnar. And so the deck before you is the kind of marrying of 3 or 4 different strategies that I think should be able to work well together without running into that half-assed problem to where we're trying to do too many separate things within one deck. And so at a really high level, the big concepts that you have running across these are the kind of familiar standbys, if you will, where you have that space of Ash LeBlanc, the Freylord, Noxus 5 attack matters kind of deck, to where the big thing that you're really able to pull off is activating Trifarian Assessor and Incisive Tactician multiple times by generating the mirror images with LeBlanc. And so that's kind of like thing number one to keep in mind. Ideally, to me, you'd be able to push this even further using Indestructible with Deathless. This is one of the things that if you've played this format a little bit with the Elder Dragons and had Deathless fall on a Saiyan Thousand Tailed, you know that that can be a very powerful effect for your opponent to have to deal with. So it's like kind of like, why can't we merge this in with the Noxan themes, put Deathless onto Trifarian Assessors, put Deathless onto Incisive Tacticians for some pretty big effects. So that's kind of idea number one, right? We have the LeBlanc mirror image style of package. Up next, you have the just standard Darius Gnar deck. This is just the blue and red deck that has all of the overwhelms in it. It's a fairly straightforward idea that works very well at crushing through decks that put forth unit walls. And so if you think of, say, any of the Nora decks, to where they put a Nora on board, they put a junk construct on board, they try and kill off the units and then generate some portals. They aren't actually interacting with any of your units. They just say, hey, I'm going to come out here and block a whole lot. If you're not going to elusive, overwhelm, or rally, you're not dealing damage to me today. And so Darius Gnar always been quite capable of handling that kind of deck. And then there's a lot of overlap between the ideas and the synergies between a LeBlanc Ash style of deck and a Darius Gnar style of deck. Now, the last kind of concept that I wanted to bring into this is, looking through what's available in the format, you get really close to just generating some 5 attack units. Iron Ballista starting at 4 attack, Red Barbed Razor Mace starting at 4 attack, and then also the Trifarian Assessor starting at 4 attack. If you're able to get a singular +1 attack onto one of these units, then it starts activating your reputation-based abilities, and you might be able to get a Bloody Business activation or an Incisive Tactician activation off of these units that aren't typically generating those style of abilities. And so that's the kind of core idea that I was wanting to bring out with us today, is taking this Darius Gnar styling, adding in some of the unit boosts to try and get up to 5 attack, and then if we have 5 attack on a wider swath of our units, perhaps that lets us activate Reputation without playing Ash, without playing Trifarian Glory Seeker, without playing a lot of these units that I don't really like within this current format. And so we'll see. This is just kind of putting the tip in and seeing how it goes, if you will. We have cut out a lot of the aggressive elements that you have from Darius Gnar, right? We aren't playing a very large 1-drops package here. We've cut out some of the elements that you would get from the Ash LeBlanc style of deck, to where you're able to get some Frostbite challenges and generate value against very big units. But at the end of the day, I think we should still have a fairly effective strategy here. And so that is the deck. That's what we're doing battle with today. But before the battles begin, you know what we got to do. We got to come out and pay that pay-to-win price. And where are you at, Indestructible? I just took you right out of the deck. We got to get you back in here, turn you premium, and there we go. Off to the races. Jump into some games, see how it goes. And so yeah, this is another one of these decks. I don't particularly like Darius Gnar as a ladder grinder. It's not terrible, but it's fine. But where it really kind of starts to pick up is when you land yourself into that space of best of 3. And if you haven't kept up with the main page of Riot, they have said that this open on the game client is legitimate. This is going to be an open here within a few days. It doesn't count towards worlds or anything, but man, we haven't got to play opens in it feels like 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 months. And so having that event pop up makes me excited to just come out and play, even if it just counts as funsies. And so that's the kind of place where Darius Gnar tends to shine. If you're looking back at some of the previous metas, to where You know, you're trying to line up Darius Gnar up against Nilah Janna and then banning out things like Karma Sett. It tends to have a pretty good track record in that style of event. And so I wanted to kind of keep it fresh in my brain as the potential type of strategy that we could be playing here in a week or so. But nonetheless, up against Galio Morgana, to me, this is the kind of deck that we're just going to look to ban coming up to the Open. It's very interesting to me in the sense, you know, if you're looking at a deck like Galio Morgana Elder Dragon, if this is a deck that you're bringing to the Open, your opponent has the opportunity to just outright ban the most powerful thing happening in the format, right? If the most powerful thing you can do is Morgana Elder Dragon, and you're not splitting these champions apart, it gives, you know, a really, really high-powered ban opportunity. And so, like, in my brain piece, I kind of feel like we're wanting to come out and just be putting bans onto whatever the Morgana deck is, and then playing stuff aggressive enough to where you're trying to outrace the Elder Dragon before their big spells come on board. But man, if you're looking to bring something like like a Morgana Elder Dragon to the Open and it just gets banned, the decks that you're left over with sound pretty horrible. And so I'm interested to see how that plays out. But into battle here, you know, reasonable enough start up against the Morgana deck. It looks like we are able to jump in and take over a little bit of board. He should have a fairly tough time taking these Ickers down now that it got up to the 6 stack. And so we're pretty close to getting the lethal without trying too hard here. I feel like we might be able to put ourselves in a space to where we can make a kind of 9 mana open attack next turn. To where we're going to play the suppression and then decisive maneuvers away one of his blockers. Now that he's done this, though, I kind of feel like we can play the suppression. He's going to hook something with the Mageseeker Inquisitor. I assume it's going to be the Razor Mace that he can get the kill on. We should be able to just make it indestructible and then be ready for combat next turn. I think this will be good. He really needs to have a +2 health strike thing. Like, Shield of Durandi is not very good here. I was like, yeah, he really needs the strike to hit our back line. We still at least get to have the proper units survive, but it's a little bit annoying. And then we are still looking pretty okay here, right? He's got, again, the double stack Icker in hand falling to 5. If we get the 2 damage in with this decisive maneuver, then he should just be kind of dying next turn. Right, so I expect something here to go wrong, but we get to deal 3 damage with the Omen Hawk and then 2 damage with the Icker at the start of the next turn. All right. Went well enough. GG, well played. On to the next one. I'm surprised it's really taken me this long. I think this might be our first video so far to where we've actually played the 4/4 overwhelm unit that generates the Ickers. It's taken such a massive amount of time to get this far. Now, granted, I did get sick and then run into Christmas and then run into New Year's, so I was kind of limited in a lot of the content that I was able to put together. But I was still playing the game, and I still just didn't feel like coming out and playing with the Icker generator, and so kind of a bummer for him. All right. But up against Kawako with the same deck, I don't really like these starts to where it's just like nothing until Iron Ballista. I'm just going to go ahead and take the full mulligan. We'll probably find something along the way, but ideally we're going to be out here starting with Omen Hawks and out here starting with Snow Dogs to try and get some of those unit boosts in the early game. All right, the game messed up a little bit. It messed up my sound. I'm not certain how much the game sound actually comes through. I feel like the absolute biggest reason to perform well at the game is to unlock the board that we have. Like, when I first played it, I was like, yeah, I'm not like the hugest fan of the music on this board, but it grew on me super fast, and now I have a hard time switching away from this board because you lose out on the... You lose out on the good musics. And so we'll see, you know. But all right, as far as this space goes, we're good to just go ahead and take the damage. What I've kind of decided in this match up against the Petricite Hounds and the units that are just bigger than your Snow Dogs, are that you just have to slam your units in. And so we could look to, say, play a Ruthless Raider, block the Petricite Hound, take it down to 1 health. But I feel like that's, for the most part, just nonsense. We're going to accept that this sucks. We look at this situation and say, this is not good, running into the 4/4 essential unit. And we just have to kind of power on and just go, okay, I gotta get my stats somewhere else, and it's gonna come out of the Snow Dog here. Yeah, it's so weird where the game like half crashed and we're stuck on the load screen music. I'm gonna have to restart the game to fix it. I gotta get my I gotta get my good jams going with the board. All right, that's a big old dog. So how do we want to handle this? I mean, we've got the big old LeBlanc in hand. The fuck just happened there? Does dog activate or something? Is this one of the new guardians up at the top right? Huh. I started highlighting our LeBlanc and the whole screen just fucking shook. But all right, let's add her in. I kind of feel like we're gonna have to make play the suppression and then do the bloody business. I'm not really excited about running out in front of this Petricite Hound with these smaller units now that it's so big. It does not combat well with LeBlanc, and so see what we can do.
No one is beyond my reach. No one.
All right, so we got to keep the suppressions at bay. I don't want to be in a spot to where we can't cast this bloody business. So we should be somewhat safe here. Again, this deck only plays the 1 strike. I typically just don't play around it. I have to assume he's going to try and bring the Inquisitor hook in on LeBlanc, and we should be able to take it down with a bloody business. Even if he has a +3 health, we have a big enough strike to remove that unit from the board. Now, if he's targeting in on our LeBlanc, man, I really want to bloody business this Petricite Hound to make it ineffective, but we kind of suck in the face of this Windsinger. All right. Just like the -6 we essentially get off of the strike feels too good to pass up.
The Winter's Claw strikes.
This will hurt.
Okay, so yeah, it looks like we're really struggling here. We're gonna fall behind pretty quick. He's gotten to the stage of the game to where he's able to just add a bunch of 6-drops to the board, and we haven't really presented enough threat to keep him on the back foot. We can't generate enough width with a board like this. He's able to just drop a Saiyan Thousand-Tailed at this point, and we can't really react to it. This Petricite Hound scaled out too hard in the early game. I'm still happy with how we played it. I think that was that's just kind of the way that you have to take this match, is that you really need to be getting the stat boosts in the early game and developing board. You could see in that, like, the comparison point between the two games, to where in game 1 we had the 4/4s that were just bigger than his units, and if it wasn't a 4/4, it was forcing a trade. And compared to this game, to where our units weren't big enough to actually generate a trade, and we just have to throw stuff away. That's what you'll find is the big kind of break point in this match. It's like you're never going to have a good matchup against this deck. It's just too good against everything. But if you're looking to, get successful in it, I feel like we've presented a lot of the kind of core strategy over the past few weeks as to where you need to be developing your units to be bigger than theirs, or you need to get a wider board so you can take advantage of a big unit boost like Champion Strength. All right, off we go. Oof. It's weird, like with the Elder Dragon Morgana deck, in the sense that typically when decks just kind of maintain that 60% win rate across the entirety of the format, people start to complain a whole lot. Like, looking at something like Sett, if it carried that 60% win rate across the entirety of the format, like Reddit would go absolutely bonkers and nutsos. But it never quite got that high. I think I don't know what the deal is. If it's just like the matter of the play rate staying at a reasonable place, or if it's a deck that just attacks with units and stuff, so it doesn't feel as bad. But it just seems like the general hatred towards Morgana Elder Dragon isn't that high. The general hatred coming from Reddit. All right, but not a bad dog draw here. We'll continue on. The thing that concerns me with these like very heavy dog draws is that it leaves you in this spot to where none of your units have overwhelm, and so we will find ourselves kind of struggling to deal damage. If we start to generate a big 8/8 LeBlanc or 8/4, 8/3, whatever whatever LeBlanc would be with a bunch of stat boosts, you're not typically able to deal a bunch of damage through this stuff, and so we'll see how it plays out. Still feel pretty good about getting the Razor Mace on board. The only thing that's kind of suck here is if he just runs out of Sett, but that's typically not the angle they're taking here. I feel like you just lose the game a ton if you run Sett out here and he dies, and so not who we saw. Looks good.
You cannot win.
And then under kind of normal circumstances, I would be fine to just go ahead and make this trade. These Snow Dogs aren't the most important unit in the world, but we're doing a pretty good job here of developing width, and we've got a decisive maneuver in hand. And so I'm really kind of envisioning this space to where we're able to play a decisive maneuver next turn and get this +10 attack and use that to finish off the game. It's looking like that's going to be pretty important here. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in Snow Dog number 3. I'm going to drop in the Tusk Speaker, and then we're just going to open attack next turn and try and finish things off with the decisive maneuvers. I can't imagine that this is a space to where we would ever want to not open. Right? Giving him the chance to Buried in Ice feels pretty bad. So it looks good. We have enough damage on board to threaten lethal without having to cast the spell. So it's not like we have to preemptively decisive maneuver. And then here we'll still pick up this this 10 damage. Almost gets us to lethal. He'll have to cast the Ichor off of this to not die going into next turn. So, still not out of the woods. If he's got Buried in Ice, there's a very good chance that this game is just over. He's going to, say, play Buried in Ice, wipe out our units. We add 1 unit to the board, then he just needs a Harsh Winds. Like, I know that it feels so close, but it is actually so far away. War Mother's Call is fine. We should ideally be able to attack around his 3 units. At the end of the day, Sett is not a super problem. Look at that. What a fucking monstrous Darius. What a monstrous Darius. He's unfortunately not going to see the light of day, but look at that. Look at that stat line, 12-12. Say, fuck your shitty units coming off the War Mother's Call. We got the big-ass Darius out here. It's the freshly reptiled Heisho. Seems okay. This is another one of these good spots. If you didn't notice the thing that kind of happened in that last game, it's like when you have decisive maneuvers on the stack, they can't flash freeze around the damage, right? So he could play a flash freeze right now and get the damages stopped, but with that flash freeze on the stack, it just kind of guarantees that no matter what frostbite-based spell he casts, the thing is going to happen at the end of the day and give us the stat bonuses we need. Alright, he casts some stuff. Casts some more stuff. Bring out that decisive maneuver. Rip it and roll it, my dude. GG. On to the next one. I'm curious if Karma survives going into the next rotation. Like, that's something that should be coming up in a couple of months, right? I'm curious to see how Riot handles the next one. Like, the first one is kind of free, right? You just get to kind of go in and kind of course correct some of the color pie. But I feel like with the first rotation, you run into a lot of problems in the sense of, say, like, look at Shurima. Okay, Shurima is heavily divined by the Sun Disk, which is fine from the perspective of like a singular set. But now, as we're going to have rotation, try and kind of recalibrate the color pie, move kind of back and forth with what some of the units are meant to do. And then, most importantly, print explorers. it makes this like really kind of weird space in terms of what what Shurima is able to do as a whole. But as a year goes on and you print Nidalee and you present a bunch of other stuff within the Shurima kit, it does give you the opportunity to kind of rework what you want to be shown as the kind of forefront of the faction within the standard space. And so I could definitely see, like, year number 1 is the year of the Sun Disk. Then year number 2, you rotate all of the Sun Disk cards out and focus on something else. And then, next year down the road, you rotate them back in or something like that. But as we're out here, in the space of Karma, like, at what point are we going to be kind of done with Karma, And it seems like she's probably about due. About due for a rotate, Alright, so this is fine. My thought process on this was he's going to have a way to deal 2 points of damage. It's going to be a Ruthless Predator. It's going to be something to deal 2. And we can deal with 2 on the Iron Ballista. So which of these units do we kind of feel like is more important to get rid of? And I want to get rid of the Nilah. I don't think I really want him just throwing a bunch of slipstreams into his deck for the remainder of the game. As opposed to Akshan is probably just going to flip, or he's going to get the flip thing happening, and that's not where I really want to be. I mean, I prefer the Akshan to flip as opposed to opponent getting a bunch of slipstreams. Still not entirely certain what this deck is supposed to do. Like Akshan Jack Nilah, maybe we should have read into it as being more of a Akshan deck as opposed to a Nilah deck and just gone after that main champion. But no, it doesn't strike me as super important. So here, this is kind of an awkward spot. I'd like to see what happens. We only get to play 1 card this turn, right? We can play a Bloody Business, an Indestructible, or a Gnar. I'm kind of leaning towards the hope that we're able to just throw the Razor Mane in front of Jack, and then Death Indestructible the Razor Mane so that it kills the Jack and then just survives into the next turn. Now, if he just passes here, I think that's pretty good for us, right? If we just take a 3-bank into this next turn. Oh shit, hang on. Dude's not brash, so we have to Bloody Business. Fine. It's a little worse in the sense that if we're on the attack, we can slam, the Bloody Business into a unit, potentially say get the kill onto Jack when we're combating with the Razor Mace, and then getting some extra combat damages in there. But didn't quite work out how we wanted. Alright, let's add in Gnar and see what happens. It's not like a particularly compelling attack this turn. Nolani coming in. I didn't read into that. Do we just want to build up board? I mean, we have a defensive decisive maneuvers, but that just doesn't strike me as very good. We can attack with everybody, indestructible whoever blocks, you know, whatever our strongest unit is. Looks like we'll lose one overwhelm to Pablo, and then he's probably not blocking with Akshan. I think that's okay. I don't think we're going to get a better indestructible than this, if we're going to be real. And then this should also come in and flip our Gnar. The thing I didn't stop... Oh, he's just blocking with Akshan. Okay. I was going to say, the thing I didn't really stop to consider enough is, like, maybe we just attack with Gnar to generate the thing, generate the Pokey Stick, and then Pokey Stick action, but this seems okay. Still one short of reputation for our tactician. Let's lead with the Snow Dog. Like, I'm having a tough time imagining how we get OTK'd this turn. But in the event that something goes off, I want to hang on to the mana to cast a decisive maneuver. You can do a lot this turn, right? With the draw 2 and then the cards costing 1 less. Let's just keep waiting a little bit. Action comes in, whatever. Jack, he's got the whole team, the Super Friends out here running around. Okay, we'll just keep passing. Are we dead to this? Barely. We just want to drop one of these. I kind of like blocking the Jack with the dog. Like, the dog is never dealing any combat damage, but this does give us a little bit of kind of pseudo damage next turn if we're going to be casting the decisive maneuvers. So I think we take the block onto Jack, and then we can hook Zolani next turn with Omen Hawk, even though it's a fairly low health unit. I guess we can still kill it if we're going to cast the decisive maneuver. But this seems okay. It's a dog. I don't think we need to preemptively pokey stick this Pablo. We're basically just gonna win with this decisive maneuvers, or the game is done. Oh, I guess we could be in a space to where. Oof, that's really just swinging for the fences, huh? I just don't think that this stuff matters. I don't know if he has the mana to get the Jack flip. It doesn't look like he does. But I think, you know, we're just attacking with the Mega Gnar. It's still nice to have a little bit of protection with the decisive maneuver-y kind of cards that we have in hand. That's annoying as shit. I think we just give up on the Gnar at this point. Let's go ahead and drop in the Pokey Stick on Pablo. Like, I know he gets to replay the Zolani, but I think we need to save the decisive maneuver for next turn. What do we got? LeBlanc turns up, opens up the opportunity for a little bloody business. Probably still just pass on that as well. We're getting close though. I mean, we have the LeBlanc, we have the rally generator, and we have a a fuckload of mana as you approach turn 10. So I think as long as we don't die this turn, we might be okay. That can be a scary thing to be saying, but now that he's out here just hee-hawing around, how do we feel about dropping in the Tactician? I think it's good. It's going to give us a chance to make an action before he gets to use thing in hand, whatever this is called. I think this is okay. Right, he wants to add Zolani to the board, and then we just get to come in and attack. So he'll put the Zolani in front of the Tactician. Can't quite kill our LeBlanc, and that does leave us in a spot to where we can now bloody business down something in the back line. The LeBlanc thing will be cheaper as well.
Strike if you must.
Hey, bleed for me.
I think the thing to worry about is if he has casting the Sentinel's Horde, right? If he casts it for Overwhelm, and we have to take this Jack off the board. Probably should have thought this one through a little bit more. Probably should have thought it through a little more. Like, I don't know. He's picked up a fuckload of cards this turn. I guess that's... I'm not certain where they even came from. Yeah, we're just dead at this point now, right? We are. Okay. I should have paced through that one a little more and just saved our spells as backup. But man, I'm not certain how we could have taken that one down. Just get so much card draw out of the action cards. I mean, that was probably our mistake earlier on in the game. I should have just like clicked on the deck and saw that it was like, this was an old trick from Expedition, right? If you weren't familiar with how the champion spacing works, the champion that you have the most copies of in your deck shows up on the left, so that you know with him having 3 champions in his deck, he's either playing 2-2 and 2, or more likely he's playing 3 copies of Action, 2 copies of Jack, 1 copy of Nilah. And with that kind of split, like we probably should have just let the Nilah hang out. Let him generate some more slipstreams and then tried to counter the spells. But I don't know. It feels like a match that should be good, but I need to play it 10 times so I know what's actually happening, and then the decisions will make a little bit more sense. All right, though, on to our final battle up against Mordekaiser Elder Dragon. Let's see what we can do. Run this Snow Dog into a 3/1. I'm okay with that. Ooh, doesn't have it. No hate spikes, nothing. All right, let's let the big critters crash on in. Let's be mana effective here. If we pick up another 2-drop next turn, we'll want to play it. Did not. There's not a ton of punishes right at this stage. Like a second Camaveran Soldier would not be ideal, but it's kind of hard to have. Feels like he just has one of these Elder Dragon draws to where you have a Saiyan Thousand-Tailed and a Viego and an Invasive Hydrovine in your hand, and just not enough stuff to really deal with this early game play. We're just sitting on a sitting on a handful of Eradicates. Sure. bloody business.
When my song ends,
Bit unfortunate with the mana for the turn. I was hoping that something cheaper would pop up so we'd get to spend it a little bit more effectively. I guess we're only losing out on one, but like the Deathless combo doesn't really work with the Assessor if you don't have any card draw units on the board. Alright, so we got to go for Darius now. This is one of these turns to where he wants to ideally just play like a big 6-drop, and we should be okay against most of their big plays. Viego's fine. He has to get in front of Darius. And so we should get to slap in for a fair amount of damage here.
live well. You matter so little.
Yeah, he hit Deathless on Viego too. That's big. So much stuff on board. All right, 1 health Darius. We're counting on you, my friend. You gotta, you gotta come out and do the work.
For Noxus. The way press on.
And we're pretty short here. We should get to draw a bunch of cards next turn, but like a singular invasive Hydrovine's gonna be pretty scary. Already getting old Viego up to 14. He's pretty close to flipping, my dudes. He's pretty close. Yeah, we're kind of stuck at this point. We'll see what his mana spend looks like. We're free to just add the Ruthless Raider to the board. Ugh, it's huge.
We burn, then kindle anew.
And he hits Challenger on the Rekindler. Okay, sure. I don't know. That's not a good matchup as it is, but I think it's safe to say he did hit perfect on those dragon boons. That's one of those things with the boons I'm kind of interested in. If you think of how a lot of these cards like Elder Dragon have worked, if you look at Bard, and Bard shuffles chimes into your deck based on the number of bards in your deck, and look at something like Rise shuffles in the shitty spell into your deck based on the number of rises. I'm curious what the decision making was looking at Elder Dragons, in the sense that you could have done something like when you play a unit that costs 6+ mana, you get to choose 1 boon for each copy of the Elder Dragon that was in your deck. And I'm curious where the decision making in that lies, if it was a power level concern, as to where you see that game to where opponent just hit perfect across the whole way. Like if he didn't hit Deathless on Viego, then we just get Viego off the board. He's not nearly as much of a problem. Then as we roll into the next turn, he can still Rekindler, but we have the answer to his other Viego, right? That was a pretty huge thing. And then hitting Challenger was the perfect one for his Rekindler as well, giving him the way to now challenge down our Darius. And so, like, as there are some of these that are just like very monumental at the specific moment, whether or not that's hitting Deathless on your Saiyan Thousand-Tailed, hitting +1/+1 impact 2 on your Wibbly Burblefish, hitting heal at the right moment at the end game so you don't die. Right, I'm curious if that was deemed to be too good. So if the Elder Dragon was set up to where if you have 1 copy in your deck, you just get a boon. If you have 2 copies, you get to pick from 2. If you have 3 copies, you get to pick from 3. Or if there was like a technical aspect to it, to where what happens if you shuffle like Elder Dragons into your deck? Or what happens if you're playing Freeform and you make a deck that has 10 Elder Dragons in it? Like, does that manifest of 6 just break the game? Like, I'm curious which way that actually kind of came out. Like, I know Bard says, like, Bards that started in your deck. I think that that fixes it with Bard. But when you look at the Elder Dragon, you could say, you know, Elder Dragons that started within your deck, and then you're playing Freeform, and then you have 10 Elder Dragons in your deck, and you play an expensive unit, and now, like, does the game break trying to put 6 options up on the screen? But at the end of the day, I'm curious to see how the Elder Dragon gets tuned. I assure you he's going to get tuned down. Because you can't just tune every 6-cost unit within the game. You have to actually do tuning to the Elder Dragon. And so I'm curious how that will go. If it means like adding in an extra boon to dilute the pool, which I kind of hate because it makes it super RNG. But then I also think some of the other things just need toned down. I think the tough one shouldn't give plus attack. I think the impact one either needs to be 1/1 impact 1 or 1 attack 0 health impact 2 or something along those lines. I think he's just overtuned as it is. But nonetheless, reasonable deck today. I think as far as this deck goes, you know, I was wanting to just try it out and see how it goes, and I wasn't quite pleased with trying to make things like Bloody Business work. I think I'm fine with the space of Incisive Tacticians, right? Incisive Tactician just kind of like fits in this space and works, but the Trifarian Assessor had a hard time being good, and the Bloody Business had a hard time being good. And so I don't think there was any point in these games to where I wanted to add in like the 1-drops to the deck. Like I didn't miss that from Darius Gnar. There was no points at any of these games where I wanted like Ash or Trifarian Glory Seekers or whatnot. I think the ship has sailed on that kind of thing ever being good. Not ever being good, but good at the current moment. And so like I kind of like the idea of where this deck is going, especially being able to do stuff like play LeBlanc into Elder Dragon Morgana, and then they just do not interact with her very well whatsoever. But these like combos that we're trying to pull off with the Assessor and the Tactician and the Bloody Business and hitting Indestructible on stuff to get multiple activations out of it, I think we are moving ourselves too far into the space of being half-assed. And it's just too much happening within one deck. I think like the unit boost stuff is fine, LeBlanc is fine, Incisive Tactician is fine, but beyond that, we should probably just be focusing in more on combat. And so maybe like take out the Assessors, take out the Bloody Businesses, switch back to something like Whirling Death, or add in more combat tricks or something. Like it feels like a pretty reasonable like 30 to 35 cards, but it is trying to do too much at this moment, and it needs some tuning in that sense. And so it's good base though, as the open is coming up. All right though, good set of games. I had fun with that. I hope you did too, because that is going to do it for us today. So I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way. You had a good time watching. This is Bust, and we thank you for being here.